Welcome to Parev TV. Our guest is Laura Kalpakian, author of some 20 novels, a memoir, a writing guide, and 5 prize-winning collections of short fiction. Laura lives in the Pacific Northwest. In this interview, we'll be discussing her latest book, Undesirable, which will be released next month on July 7th. And we'll also touch upon another book of hers, The Unruly Past, published in August 2021. Laura, thank you very much for joining us and giving us of your time and enlighten us and inform us of this amazing book that covers your dad's battle for justice in defense of his son, Doug. Give us an idea, how did this safe contain these letters and telegrams, and what was it like? What went through your mind when you first saw these letters?
So this safe, my parents moved up north here to be with us a long time ago. And I had a big house. And so the safe from their house went into my basement, and nobody ever paid
Mhm.
it any mind. And then in the fall of 2023, my mom was in a nursing home very near the end, and I needed some documents for her. And so I went down there into the basement and opened this safe, and I found these on the bottom shelf, these stacks of documents, each in big envelopes. And I was I was stunned to find this. I mean, I knew that my father had struggled long and hard to get my brother's discharge changed, but I had no idea of the actual undertaking. At that time, I just had to walk away from all that, and I could not return to it until 2024, after my mom had died. And that's when I brought everything up, and I started to go through this and read and reread, read and reread. And I knew that it had to be a book.
It is an amazing book, but let me also once again stress that this is your dad's battle for justice against
Right.
the U.S. Army, out of all,
Yes.
and it was to restore his son's reputation, honor.
Right.
When
Right.
you read it, or when we start reading it, you think it's going to be impossible to change that dishonorable or disfavorable to whatever it turned to be. How was this? How did it develop?
Well, so when my brother came home, my father advocated for my brother the whole time he was in Vietnam. My brother was not a model soldier. My
Uh-huh.
brother
Good.
was in trouble constantly and heavily into drugs, lots of AWOL, lots of hepatitis, lots of malaria, dysentery, every terrible thing you can imagine. And when finally, and my father flew to meet him on the tarmac when he came back, which was late August of 1970. He had been 14 months in Vietnam without any kind of R&R, nothing. And so not only was his health ravaged, but he's clutching the sandal of this Viet Cong that he had killed. So my dad knew instantly, like, there was big one trouble here. And so um, he started this battle within 6 weeks of my brother's coming home. My dad was certain that this undesirable discharge was not only undeserved, it was unjust.
Mm.
So he went through all these various entities. He worked with congressmen, he worked with senators, he worked with all these various people, and at every turn he was denied.
Mm.
And keep in mind that this undesirable discharge meant my brother had no veterans benefits. So all the hospitalizations, all the psychiatrists, all this, my parents had to pay for all of this because he had nothing. And also, my dad found out, like, with this undesirable, he would be barred from professions. I mean, it would ruin his life.
Yeah.
And my father knew, like, if he continued to carry this shame, he would never be the same.
Mm-hmm.
So he worked and worked, and then finally he had 3 years, was turned down by various entities in the Army, which I go into at great length in the book here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And finally, the crucial moment, my family remains convinced the crucial moment came when my dad reached out to Robert Mardian, then the Assistant Attorney General of the United States. He cold called him. I don't know how he got his number or what. I don't know why Robert Mardian didn't tell him to butt out and go, but he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And at Mardian's request, my dad sent him his 34-page single-spaced précis of this case. Mm-hmm. And Robert Mardian sent this material on to the Undersecretary of the Army. And my family remained convinced always that that was the crucial moment. So what happened then was that the Army Board for the Correction of Military Records met. I mean, Mardian stepped out or stepped back then. My dad continued to CC him on all the, and they were enormously grateful, obviously. And he had approached Mardian on behalf of the shared Armenian heritage with my mom, who's her, I took her unmarried name when I started to write, Kalpakian. So they changed it not to the honorable that my father had worked for and wanted. They changed it to a general discharge under honorable circumstances. Mm-hmm. And this allowed Doug veterans benefits, good. It meant that he was not be barred from various professions, good. But my father still wanted the honorable anyway, and he never got that. As I went through these documents over and over and over, what I found was a process, and what the book makes clear, of this egregious cover-up on the part of the Army.
Let me just mention here also President Nixon at the time was approached. Somewhere in the book you do mention, besides Robert Mardian. But let me also speak about the very important note by a Dr. Cantrell that was missing in the file. I thought that was the key to the whole issue.
Well, my father thought so too. Once he, what had happened was my brother, when my brother came back from Nam, immediately the family sent him to a nearby Loma Linda Medical Center, and he was there for 10 days. And the whole 10 days, my dad went to go see him every day. And my brother told him the story that he had this letter from the doctor there in Vietnam that said he should not go into combat, that his health was impaired. So my brother told somebody, I have this letter, and the sergeant said, oh, give it to this dude over here. And my brother did. And it was never seen again. And my dad found this Dr. Cantrell, who was by that time who actually lived in Fresno, and who was, and Cantrell remembered my brother, and he wrote this notarized letter, And when my dad had that in hand, he thought, this is it, But as I said, that he was denied at every turn. And so what had happened was when Doug's unit was then going to go into, ordered by Nixon to go into Cambodia. Actually, Nixon just admitted that they had already been doing this. My brother's unit had been into Cambodia several times.
Mm-hmm.
He said, wait, I have this letter, but he couldn't produce it. Mm-hmm. So they put him on a helicopter, sent him into Cambodia, and he went AWOL.
Yep.
Again.
Yeah. Laura, let me go back to there were so many given writings because your brother also wrote to your dad, to the family, asking your family to write to him. But he also said one very powerful thing. I don't know where it says, but it says these charges left scars on the canyons of my memory. That's a very, very powerful line there. The charges that left scars on his memory.
Yes.
I also want to bring out what you had mentioned in the book, that the army has no obligation to civilians. They have their own agenda.
Yes. Yes.
What did you mean by that?
I meant that in this regard, they had all the power. My dad put all this stuff together, and they just couldn't deny him. Da-da. And they didn't have to say why. They didn't have to say anything. They were their own brick wall, their own entity. And, my dad continued to fight this. And in fact, chronologically, the last letter that I found in the file was one from 1974. So like 2 years later, my dad was still looking for a way to get this changed into honorable. And when there was no reply there, that was it. He put the letter in the safe. He closed the door, he turned the lock, and a half century passed before I found it.
Laura, another thing in this book is that 1/8 of the soldiers who came back were for medical reasons. That's amazing. That's amazing, the statistics you get. And in Washington, when we have the Vietnam Memorial, there are some names of close to 58,000 soldiers who died. Your brother's name and many others are not on that wall.
Right. But what happened, the point that I make in the book, one of the points, is that, my brother's name is not there with the fallen. Most of these they were such young men, like my brother. The average age was 19 years old, just out of high school, And, but in some ways, they paid for that time with the rest of their lives. And my brother's was not a happy life. For 30 years, he had demons he could not always defeat.
Yes. Why is it that the book will be available on July the 7th?
I don't know. The publisher, that was the day they chose.
But I just wanted to know, what has been the response so far?
I've only had one pre-pub review, and did I send that to you? I can't remember. I put it up on my website. It was a passionate, raw review.
I got it from Texas University Press.
No, New Mexico.
Texas, New Mexico. But let me jump into this other book, which is also fascinating, The Unruly Past. This is this is the book I really want to discuss in much more detail. This is a very deeply personal family story. And my
Yes.
question is, what inspired you to write this book? Very interesting, very, very interesting.
Well, I had been, I was primarily I'm primarily a fiction writer. And so, um, but I taught memoir for like 20 years, and I published assorted memoir essays and that sort of thing. Most often in Ararat, which alas is no longer the Armenian literary magazine that was run by Leo Hamalyan. And so when I when University of New Mexico Press asked me to write this book, Memory into Memoir, this
Mhm.
was the title of my class. I called it
I
How
see.
You Take Memory and You Transform It into Narrative. So because it was a university press, they had what they called peer reviews. And one of the peer reviewers got her knickers in a knot because I mainly write fiction and I didn't mainly write. And my friend who runs this little press out of Wisconsin said, "You write memoir? Let's put these together in a book and publish it." So it was at her little prod there that I put these together. And it was, to me, it was a fascinating it was a fascinating way to explore the past. And one of the things I love about the jacket, which my friend designed, is it shows like how different these two families, how could they ever have come together except at the behest of two worldwide cataclysms. And
Laura, I don't know if I really would like to get into that uniqueness of your family background. Your dad was a Mormon.
right.
Your mom was Armenian, whether Protestant or whatever. And here you have these two cultures, and you speak very, very clearly about the two cultures. And I'm very
Yes.
happy to say you sided with your mom's side, with all
Well,
the
that was always the most important to us.
that,
Yeah.
that was it's really, really beautiful. And when I asked you, do you know any Armenian? You said, I know one word, inch
Yes.
beses.
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
and
Right. That served me very well that time in Honolulu. Yeah.
absolutely. I know the story of Sergei, the
Yes.
oceanographer in Honolulu. Tell us that
Yes.
story. With one word, you befriended this guy.
So I was living in Honolulu. My husband is an oceanographer, and this gorgeous Russian
Uh-huh.
research vessel came into port, and the Russians were not allowed off the boat, but they invited the scientists at University of Hawaii there to come on. And so, my husband called and says, "Oh, come with me." So I go, and they were all very nice and everything, but and the ship was incredibly glamorous. Anyway, we're sitting there, and they have musical notes, and this one man stands up and he sings this incredibly sad song, and the Russian sitting next to me says, "Oh, that's the saddest song you'll ever hear. He is Armenian." And I said,
I,
"I am Armenian." And after he sang, this man was a doctor in in Soviet Armenia then. This was 1981. And he had no English, and I had only
Armenian.
this one word, inch beses. And that was all I could say to my grandmother had taught me. And I was his sister after that.
Yeah.
I mean, somehow they got permission to get off the boat. We all came together. We lived in faculty housing. We had this big international meal. the Armenian doctor whose name I cannot now remember, he made, you know, he made what we call dara, a lot of people call doma. I mean, and here we are, you know, at the Cold War, and everyone is making these toasts to peace, and everyone is crying,
Yeah.
and you know, and there are the KGB agents. Ta-da!
You describe it beautifully, and that's really one of the highlights in this book. Also, another thing, you seem to be very fiery spirited young lady when you were growing up. When you were 14, you said, no more Mormon in my family.
Right,
I don't, what was the
right.
reason you kind of let go?
I didn't. I had to keep going to church because my dad insisted, but I was done with them because they had, and I described, we had this Sunday school teacher who was just like a font of sin. You know, I mean, she was always on the lookout for sin. And here we are, these little pubescent 13 and 14-year-olds, and
Yeah.
you know, telling you it's a sin if you ever kiss anybody you're not engaged to. I mean, oh, anyway, but one of her things was that if you have like a family member who has the opportunity to convert to Mormonism and doesn't do it, that person is going to burn in hell. Like, and real hell. I mean, like the Catholics have nothing on the Mormon hell. And this was my mom. My mom was very upset with my father. She remained upset with him forever for changing everything and bringing us up Mormon, because that wasn't part of the plan. His father died when I was about 10, and that was it. He went bonkers with the faith. And but that was, my mom never converted. And so I kept thinking, like, what? I'm supposed to sit here in the afterlife and watch my mom burn in hell? No, I'm out of here, you know?
Yeah. Laura, another thing I'd like to touch upon because we could all relate to that. The fact that so many Armenians changed their names from the Armenian Boyajan to
Right,
Boyd, or
right.
Hovannes to John, and Haigas to Harry. But one of the last names, I think it was on your grandparents, Rulachsuzyan. That's a
Yes.
biggie. I don't know if you made any notes of investigation of what it means. Do you know what Rulachsuzyan means?
No.
I'm laughing because when I was growing up, there was another family next to us, Gulach. They used adjectives to describe the family, and he is the one without ear,
Oh,
earless.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's amazing the research you've done to bring that up, along
Right.
with the many areas your family where you mentioned Kayseri and Adana, even
Yes.
Jerusalem, and in some cases Haifa. When I heard
Yeah.
the word Haifa, that's where my wife was born. So I
Wow.
know the area, and I was thinking of what did these people go through before they end
Right.
up in California.
Right.
It's like a very important missing jigsaw puzzle,
Right.
and a very important thing also, I have to say this because I would like people to read this book, is the memoirs of your grandma or whoever wrote the story in Adana.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting story, and this is an
Yeah.
eyewitness account of what happened there. I've never
Yes.
read anything like that before.
Yes.
Well, all
Yes.
these covers.
This teacher saved my grandmother's life. And I so often wonder, like, what would have gone through. She was 14 when this happened.
Yes.
The teachers, she was a day student in this Protestant American school, and the teacher came to the home and asked her mother, her parents, like, can she come be a boarding student? that knowing that she would be safe in an American school because everybody could see what was coming down the pike.
Mhm.
And so her parents parted with her and never saw her again, of course, you know.
That's
So, but these Protestant missionaries, they were heroic, you know. And as I said, years later in the 50s, my grandparents found Miss Towner, that was her name. She was living in a retirement home and about 30 miles from Los Angeles. I actually met her at the
really,
age of 8, you know. So it was it it was an incredible story, but it's also like my grandparents, they kept the Kalpakian and they changed their first names, but they kept the Kalpakian. Many of the other relatives did not. But I
Mhm.
want to tell you a really interesting thing. So, as I said, my mom died in December of 2023. And in January 2024, my youngest son, Brendan, got Kalpakian tattooed all along his, you
That's
know.
beautiful.
Yeah. And and then we reconnected with so much of the Kalpakian family that had been scattered for 100 years.
Absolutely.
And next month, that son and my little granddaughter are going to Paris to be with them. So
That's
it's just really touching and wonderful.
Laura, there's so much you can discuss. There's a lot of life in this book which we can relate to. My one last thing is, yes, there was Mormon, yes, there was Methodist, yes, there was Protestant, but when your mom passed away or somebody in the family passed away, you made a point. In lieu of flowers, they had asked to be donations made to the Armenian
Right.
Apostolic Church.
That
That
was my
was
grandmother.
grandma. That was a
Yeah.
very
And my
wow.
grandmother's funeral service was at the St. James Armenian Church, and it was all conducted in a language because my grandparents were so set upon being Americans that they just, you know,
Yes.
they clipped everything but the food. The food was our only connection, and so nobody had any Armenian except for Idris at the picnic. And so we all sitting there. I mean, like, 12 grandchildren and whoever else. And nobody can understand a word this guy is saying,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know? But yeah, that was my grandmother.
Laura, God bless you and thank you for these books. Is there anything else in closing as we wrap up this very fascinating interview? Anything else in
Yes.
closing?
Um, these books were both tremendous labors of love and respect, for uh, for my family, for what my parents and my grandparents endured. And sometimes I just want to say this, that like I have gone through times in my life where I thought that I knew that I could take strength because I came from people who crossed the Mediterranean and the Atlantic 3 times just to be able to come here. They were turned away, sent back, came again, and and whatever else they did to sever those roots and just be American. I mean, I just felt like, yeah, I knew that I could take strength from that, and I do. I do. And that was another reason I took my mom's name when I started to write and publish. My grandfather had 4 daughters,
Yep.
and I thought that they all married. We all had Anglo names, And I thought this is a way for my grandparents' name to live on.
Beautiful, beautiful. Once again,
Yes.
congratulations, Laura. This is
Thank
the
you.
first time we meet, and it's
Yeah.
been a fascinating interview with you. There's
Yes.
so much you have to tell us, and I hope people can turn to you. Laura Kalpakian's books. Last list. This one is coming up, available July 2026. Undesirable, and also very highly recommended. The Unruly Past.
Yes.
Again,
Yes.
thank you very much, Laura.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Take
Have a
care.
great day. Thank you.
All right. You too.